Hi, everybody. Casey McPherson here with Takira Rose Foundation and Alpha Rev, and excited today to talk to Roy Perez from Starlite, who's the premier recovery center in Central Texas, and they are an official sponsor of Rose Fest that's happening August 12th. And so wanted to spend some time with Roy and get into the nitty gritty of Rose Fest, rare disease, addiction, all the things. And Roy, I've already uh, enjoyed getting to know you, but want to give Starlight a huge shout out for being a Rose Fest sponsor, and we're excited to have them participate with us on this event, and have really enjoyed getting to know more about what you guys do. But Roy, thank you for coming on and for doing a, a collaborative interview with me. I really appreciate it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you want
we're
to
really
intro
happy.
yourself a little bit, talk
Yeah,
about Starlight.
I do want to respond to that. I do want to respond to that by saying we are very happy to be a sponsor. We're very happy to be working with you guys. This foundation, there's so much meaning behind it, and we're excited about that, 100%. But my name is Roy. I do my title is business development, but for just to make it simple, is I'm a marketer and I do outreach for here in Texas, in Central Texas, leading. We are the first treatment center, the longest lasting treatment center of 65 years here. So yeah, beautiful campus. We love it. We have many different things to offer, many different tracks, many different programs. You know, we have a program for veterans that we dedicated only to veterans, separate clinical team, separate uh, staff, separate. Everything is completely separate. And then we have general population, but then also tracks like we have an LGBTQ track, we have a Christian track, first responders track as well that I forgot to mention. So yeah, just very individualized treatment. A lot of great things going on here. We absolutely love what we do. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Well, I'm excited. For those of you that don't know, we'll start off with Chikiro's Foundation is a foundation for children with rare genetic diseases that currently don't have any hope or any treatments. And I found out about this actually existed about 6 years, 5 years ago for my daughter Rose when she was diagnosed with a rare disease. There was no cure. Biotech and pharma are not going to create one, even though we have the technology for it, because it just doesn't make enough money. And one of the ways Roy and I connected, which I hope that we'll talk a little bit about, is when you're looking at these neurodegenerative, neurodevelopmental diseases like my daughter has, there's a lot of mental health issues that come along with that. There's a lot of communication and family problems. Addiction springs out of that. I'm working on one of my last addictions. Netflix may be the very, very, very last one to go, but
Yeah,
all the harder ones, have slowly like come off
yeah,
over the years, and so I started the Takero's Foundation to create a genetic treatment for my daughter's disease, as well as a platform. How could we create treatments for these diseases that these children have, which by doing so, not only saves their lives, but also saves the lives of their families and the generations of those families to come.
yeah.
I just imagine Rose saying "Daddy" again. I imagine Rose being able to have a friend, maybe falling in love or getting married. But without a genetic treatment, Rose never will. And so in Rose Fest is a sort of a celebration, utilizing music to bring us all together in celebration of these kids and of the hope that we have for these kiddos. And so that's August 12th, and Starlight is a big sponsor for that event. And so we're hoping that you see Roy and his people out there, and please look up more about Starlight. And just personally, uh, the reason why I was able to start this foundation is because I did go through recovery. And so recovery centers are very, very special to me in that the way I used to deal with pain and suffering is by running from it. And so, when you see parents with kiddos with rare diseases, it's very not uncommon to see divorces, addiction, any sort of trauma, that can happen in a family's life. It's not uncommon for one of the parents just to go, "I'm out," and this is too much. It's too hard. I'm sure anyone listening would have some sort of situation in their life where they wish they could just kill the pain instantaneously. A lot of my early addiction came from that, just needing to kill the pain of losing my dad, losing my brother. And so by going through treatment, going through the 12 steps and getting sober, it gave me foundational work to when I was faced with this incredible, terrible thing with my daughter Rose. I had the tools to know what to do next. Even if I didn't know the whole story, I knew it wasn't running away, and I didn't have to be scared of the pain I felt. So, anyway, Roy,
Can I ask you a question, though?
yeah, yeah,
So living in recovery, you started to live by like certain principles and stuff. And whenever this life instance happened with your daughter, you were able to process it and deal with it in a different way, correct? Is that what you said?
yeah. I think as I found out through recovery that oftentimes resentments are a big part of holding on to addiction. There's a story in what they call the Big Book of the idea that we, as addicts, consider ourselves the master puppeteers or the maestro. We want to control all the things around us, and
Yeah.
what makes it very difficult is it's impossible to control all the things around us, and
Yeah.
and so for those of us that struggle with addiction like myself, I had to come to terms with the fact that the only thing I could control possibly was me, and at first that was scary, but then it became freeing because it meant I got to decide how I wanted to react to a situation. I no longer was under the control of my environment, which I thought I was trying to control, but
Yeah.
I could actually choose to make a decision that may not be the decision everyone else is making, or maybe a scarier decision because I was no longer running. And that's what, sobriety brought that for me, and
And would you say that since you have that control now on your decisions, would you say that you're like being that you're in recovery, that has a lot to do with you starting this foundation? Like you're able to, like you're in a place
absolutely.
to.
Yeah. I mean, this typically, in my younger years, something like this happening, I would have gone, to what could kill this pain. Well, I would have lost my children. I would have lost whatever job and certainly not been able to start a nonprofit organization,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I look at me as a testament to how we can turn pain and suffering into something that is potentially beautiful,
Yeah.
compelling, and purposeful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you and I've talked a little bit about that you have some of that too, and I think a lot of us that go through recovery experience that transition that even maybe people that have never even been through recovery may not have even been able to experience. So to me, that's always been a gift of the addiction and going through this sort of process of reaching the bottom of the barrel, so to speak,
Mm.
and 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 restructuring your belief system that allows you to actually thrive in the midst of pain, which is just so unusual to me, because I could
Yeah.
never ever imagine that without a bottle of Jack Daniels.
I mean, and then the gratitude is just so much richer, now that we live in recovery and stuff. Just when you mentioned that bottom of the barrel, and we sit in despair and loneliness for so long, and then coming out of it is just gratitude. The light, the spirit, everything is so much more. It's so much greater. But I did want to ask you now. I want to get your perspective on this too. Would you do you think at a center like Starlight, where there's a lot of healing going on, there's people that can come out of Starlight that can do something like what you're doing today, like a foundation, making a difference, changing their life. Would you say so?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. If I'm able to do this, then certainly anyone could. And you know, my story, which a lot of people who will watch this, a lot of people might not know this, but I was a professional musician most of my life. Professional, meaning I was living off of girlfriends. I was spending half my money on drugs and alcohol. Um, and I was living below the poverty line for probably 80% of my career. And I to build the idea of me building anything seemed completely impossible because I would burn every single bridge I ever had. And it was largely due for me with the idea that I missed my dad, I missed my brother, and it came out of trauma. It came out of something that I didn't know how to handle. I didn't have tools how to handle it. And going through recovery, within that next year, I went from a broke musician to having a top 10 hit on the radio in the US, having a top 10 video on VH1, and then getting married, which probably got married a little too early based on the rules, and then touring the world, and so the changes that happened for me, my limiting beliefs um, were were gone, you know. When I look back at my life before sobriety, I saw the desire to build something, the desire to build purpose, but the inability to rise above my need for escape, my need for a crutch, and largely just due to the fact that I hurt and I didn't want to feel the hurt. I didn't want to feel the pain, and and it seemed impossible for me to ever get to a place where I wouldn't use some chemical substance to help me, you know, not feel that pain.
Yeah.
So recovery really brought me a lot of freedom, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't like I made a decision and then I was forced to by the court. I was arrested over a dozen times the last year that I fully drank, and um, so they forced me to do this stuff, and I faked it, and then I got in trouble for that, and then I sort of like did it half cocked. Then I went back out, and then I did a little bit better, and then I went back out, and I had to be super determined and willing to do everything it took to become free, And I've seen people go in and come out and be completely changed, and that was it. I've seen others that struggled through it, and that was me. I was a mess struggling through it. And I think we're all a little different. Some of us are a little bit more hard headed than others. I certainly was. I'm curious with you, Roy. Like what part of if you're parts that you're willing to share. One, you know, your your why you're here. I'd love to hear, and and then maybe a little bit about the why rare disease matters to you too.
Yeah. So I touch up on the rare disease, like why I am here in this interview with you for this foundation. One, because the purpose behind it is strong. I fully have your back, and I fully believe in you, like what you're doing. I believe you're gonna make a difference. with my heart, right? And then of course also personal, personal stories. My uncle, my mom and dad are. My dad is a single child, only child, and then my mom is has one brother. So I only had one uncle, and when it comes to Hispanic families, we have all these aunts and uncles and stuff like that. Yeah, but not me. I mean, I had all second cousins, like all second aunts, or whatever, great aunts or whatever you call them. I only had one uncle, and my one uncle, his name was Joel, and he had a rare disease as well, meaning that he was very disabled and very behind. The way we described it was the way it was described to me as a child was he was very delayed, and he didn't ever emotionally grow over 13, 14. So he's like a 50-year-old man, and he still operates like a 13-year-old. Very immature, very emotionally stunted, very even cognitively not even available. At most times he can talk and he can carry conversations. I mean, he's great there, but you can tell when you look at him and when you talk to him that he's different and very. I mean, any normal person on the street, if they were to have an interaction with him, they would first probably dismiss him or probably not want to talk to him because he looks different as well. But he's also very, very mentally delayed. He raised me. He lived with me most of my childhood till I was about 12, 13. He lived with my mom and I. So I had a really close relationship with him. He took me. We would hang out every day. We I mean, I would go into he had his own room, so I would go into his room and hang out with him all the time. So yeah, he was. And whenever I was 12, he was 12 as well, even though he was a
Hmm.
grown man. So we were able to hang
Yeah.
out and talk about Star Wars, and we liked all the same stuff. So it was cool. So I have that personal relationship as well when it comes to rare diseases like this.
Would
And
he
then on
ever
the
be able to work? Would he ever be able to have a job or?
I not a real job. No, it would have to
Hmm.
be some sort of like somebody hiring him as like a hand or something like
Hmm.
that. Do I? He wouldn't be able to work like at a McDonald's. He's
Hmm.
not. He's not there. He wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff. But if he was like to help someone with a construction job or something, he can do that.
Hmm.
He
You
can do
think
some
he'd
lawn.
ever, be at a place where someone like him would get married, sort of, or anything like that, or like
Oh
live
no,
on his own? Okay.
no, no, never. He would never get married, or he would never. I know he'd want to get married. He would never. I don't think he'd ever get married, or he would never be able to live on his own. When my grandma passes, I don't know what to do. We don't have a plan yet. But I mean, his sister and I, which is my mother, we would have to get together and plan something. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, what you're facing and what I potentially will be facing with my daughter without a treatment is what hundreds of millions of parents and families are facing every day. And the reason we don't really hear about them is, one, there's a lot of shame around it. Um, and then two, the caretakers are usually just surviving between their job, their own personal relationships, and then changing adult diapers, or whatever it is, like sort of some of that round the clock care of having this sort of a mouth to feed that isn't going to grow into someone that has some sort of return dividend.
Yeah.
They're in survival mode. So I've got a lot of respect for you, Roy, and it's a unique story that I think a lot of people can relate to. That have lived in silence around these types of familial relationships. That what baffled me was that we live in this incredible age now that we have technology to cure many diseases, like your uncles or my daughters. And I'm assuming around your uncles because I don't know the exact disease, but it's very similar to my daughters and other these monogenic mutations. And what baffled me was that our system was set up where we have technology, it just doesn't make enough money. And so kids and adults and families will continue to suffer, not because there's there's no hope. It's which was true 30, 40 years ago. Now there's a lot of hope. There's
Yeah.
solutions. It's just that they don't have access to it,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought about, for me getting sober, if I didn't have access to sobriety, if I didn't have access to a system that allowed me to be free of addiction, where would I be? I mean, I probably wouldn't even be alive. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be, if I was alive, I certainly wouldn't be a father. And if I was a father, I certainly wouldn't have my children at home playing the blender in the background, me having to tell them during the interview to turn it off. That's a honor that I get, you know,
Yeah.
and a gift I get. So, I think access has a lot to do with people's health, you
Yeah.
know.
Speaking on access, back to your other question that you mentioned, the first part of it was being able to be here, right? I wouldn't be able to be here interviewing a gentleman starting a foundation, right, of a nonprofit that's going to help a lot of people. Like someone like you would never talk to someone like me. I mean, obviously, in addiction, yes, right. But where you are now, I wouldn't have access to doing something like this because I mean, in my addiction, I was completely lost and hopeless. And the way you mentioned it, like I was not of use to anyone. And today, I'm able to do things like this. I'm able to help people. I'm able to reach out. I'm able to, I mean, have relationships with my family and my daughter and these kind of things that, I have a 6-year-old daughter as well.
Mm.
I have a relationship with her today, and I wouldn't be able to have that relationship if I was in addiction. There's absolutely no way, right? So the way you mentioned it is like access. That's what recovery has given me. It's given me access, connection to a higher power, to family, to community, to love, to all these things, and then also my career that I really really love. I love my career. Just so many things that recovery can give, not only us two, but so many other people out there. That we can touch together.
I mean, absolutely. And that's when I think about, and I think you might agree with me on this with your position at Starlight. And I think about my work at the foundation and and getting to play music at this festival, coming up. It's what's given me the most purpose and satisfaction is doing something outside of myself, doing something for others that's a greater purpose than just serving me. And that sounds really, I am one, to be honest, I'm probably one of the most selfish people that exists. But what I found was that by serving myself, I was unhappy. By
Yeah,
by just focusing on what I want and how fast can I get it, and that it made me an unhappy person. And to be able to have an outlet where I can serve others and feel purpose behind that, it's really, I never would have found that without sobriety, you know,
yeah,
because I was continuing to just feed that, and if you're listening and you're not an addict, like, and you're like, man, who are these guys? I,
yeah,
I would encourage you that, I think every person has the capacity to see themselves for who they truly are, which is this really beautiful, unique, powerful individual, completely connected. And oftentimes we can want to escape our feelings, our reality. You may not be an addict that's going to Starlight or going to AA, or you might be. But regardless, I think, you know, one thing that I found to be true and that I'm excited about is our ability to affect another human being's life.
hmm
That's just freaking incredible.
yeah. And
So
not only I want to add
go
on
ahead.
that, not only on the addiction side of things, but also like on the foundation, like the purpose of the foundation. What you're doing there and growing that, like that. There's the addiction side of things that we talked about a little bit, but then there's also that other side that your mission is to touch a lot of those lives as well. right? That's the purpose of the Rose Fest. You know, the purpose of
Absolutely.
the Rose Fest is, or actually, I don't need to answer that. What is the purpose of the Rose Fest? What is the purpose of Rose Foundation?
Yeah, so, To Cure Rose Foundation was started not just to cure my daughter, but could we create genetic treatments for these kids? And could we come up with a platform to do it, less expensive? Because this work is very, very expensive. And could we do it faster? And so we have the first drug ever made for my daughter's disease. And now we have to get that drug into an FDA trial, a clinical trial. So now we're raising money for that part, and we're going to be pulling in more diseases that we're making drugs for. And when I say drugs, I mean genetic treatments that are fixing sort of a, a broken genetic piece of code in that child's body that was either born that way or it was passed on. Rosefest this year is all centered around Texas music. So we have Corey Morrow headlining. Of course, Alpha Rev is playing, my band, and Broken Arrow, who's a very up and coming band, and Kyle, and we're doing it at Buck's backyard. And I'm more of an alternative Americana band guy and rock and roll. I grew up on rock and roll, but I grew up in Texas, and so Texas music, red dirt music, was always a part of my repertoire. And so we'll be playing our record Bloom. If you want to go on Spotify, you can look up Bloom Alpha Rev, ALPHAREV, and that's sort of shows you a more Americana Texas music uh, vibe. And then Corey Morrow, obviously everybody knows who he is, just a really great Texas music artist, and he'll be headlining. We'll have auction items, we'll have raffle items, we'll have ways people can donate. We're going to work on a special drink. If you're in recovery, you can go to the bar and order this rose drink. We still don't have a title for it, but we're going to be releasing it. We'll let you
Yeah,
know what it is. And if you do drink, we'll have plenty of alcohol there too.
yeah,
And so if you do drink, we want you to, so you bid more on auction items. If you don't drink, feel very comfortable because the founder of the event is not drinking either. So
yeah,
regardless of who you are, you've got a place to come and feel at home. And the idea here is let's raise a bunch of money for these kids, and by dancing, playing music, having fun, and celebrating life, the life we all get to live. Can we give that access to these children that may not really get to have that kind of choice that we have? So that's what I'm so excited about.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's gonna be a great festival. It's gonna be fun. Uh, but also, can you tell us about who Rose is?
Yeah, so if you want to go on, you can look at some of the on Facebook or Instagram, my pages of Rosie. Um, she's 7 years old, and she lost her ability to talk. She struggles with walking. She doesn't really have any friends because she doesn't know how to connect. But she's an incredible little lady. She's beautiful. Um, she is funny. She used to sort of sing with me. She doesn't do that anymore, but she screams with me. And so, if she doesn't connect with anybody or anything all day long, I can set her on the bed at the end of the day, get out my guitar, play some music, and she locks eyes with me. And it's like in that moment that I know that we're like, she's my daughter. She knows I'm her dad. And no matter how hard that day was for her or for us as a family, we feel connected, and that gives me the fuel to just keep going, and I want to provide that connection for all these, hundreds of millions of kiddos out there that don't have an option like Rosie, and so, Roy, I want to thank you. I want to thank Starlight for supporting this idea that we can give hope to these kiddos, and want to say how much honor and respect I have for you, and Starlight, for what you guys are doing for our folks here in Central Texas. So, thanks a bunch, man, and I
No, thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you for sharing that last part that you just mentioned there. that really can touch the heart of many. You know, what you're doing is good here. This is a good thing, and I'm excited to be behind it.
Yeah, me too. And so come if you're listening and you made it this far with Roy and I, come out to Rose Fest August 12th. You can go to securerose.org. You can look on probably Starlight's Facebook or Secure Rose Facebook or Casey McPherson's Facebook. You can also just Google Rose Fest 2023 and the ticket link will pop up. So get on there, get you some tickets, and we'd love to see you Rose Fest August 12th. Roy and I will be there. We hope you will be too. Peace.
Thank you guys.